Good morning. Today we are looking at a story that continues to raise serious questions years after it first came to light. The connection between former President Donald Trump and the late Jeffrey Epstein is not just a piece of history. It is a puzzle with missing pieces that people are still trying to put together. Understanding this relationship is important because it involves two of the most talked about figures of our time. One went on to become the President of the United States, and the other was a convicted sex offender who died in jail, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and devastated victims. The story matters because it touches on themes of power, wealth, and accountability. When public figures are connected, we naturally want to understand the nature of their relationship. What did they know about each other? What did they do together? These questions become even more urgent when one of those individuals is involved in serious crimes. The details surrounding their time together in Palm Beach, Florida, particularly at Trump's Mar-a-Lago club, are central to this story. This was their shared playground, a place where the powerful and wealthy gathered. What happened within those exclusive walls has been the subject of much speculation and investigation. Recently, new comments from Donald Trump himself have brought this old story back into the spotlight, adding another layer of complexity. These new statements force us to revisit what we thought we knew and ask new questions about who knew what and when they knew it. It's a story that deserves our full attention. The story of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein begins in the late 1980s, in the exclusive world of Palm Beach, Florida. At that time, both men were making names for themselves in different circles. Trump was a famous real estate developer and a celebrity, known for his lavish lifestyle and his properties. Epstein was a mysterious financier who was quickly building a network of powerful friends. They were introduced, and soon they became part of the same social scene. They were often seen at the same parties and events, moving in a world where money and influence were everything. Their friendship was built in this environment of extreme wealth. They were known to be friends for over a decade, from the late 1980s into the early 2000s. Trump once described Epstein as a terrific guy in a 2002 magazine interview. He said Epstein was a lot of fun to be with, and that he enjoyed his company. He even mentioned that Epstein liked beautiful women as much as he did, and that many of them were on the younger side. At the time, these comments might have seemed like casual remarks between two wealthy men. But looking back, these words take on a much darker meaning, given what we now know about Epstein's crimes against young women and girls. Their social lives often intersected at Mar-a-Lago, Trump's private club in Palm Beach. Epstein was a member there, and it became a frequent backdrop for their interactions. Photos from that era show them together, smiling and talking at parties. Epstein would fly on Trump's private jet on at least one occasion. They were, by all accounts, friends who spent a significant amount of time in each other's company. This was not a distant acquaintance. It was a relationship that was visible to everyone in their exclusive social circle. However, it is this very closeness that now raises so many questions. When you are friends with someone, you often get a glimpse into their life that others do not see. Fast forward to more recent times. Long after their friendship ended and after Epstein's death, Donald Trump made some new and surprising comments. On July 25, 2025, during an interview, he brought up a new detail about his history with Epstein at Mar-a-Lago. He claimed that he discovered Epstein was taking my spa people. This was a new piece of information that had not been part of his previous explanations for their falling out. The statement immediately caught the attention of the public and the media because it added a new dimension to the story. It suggested a direct interaction between Epstein and the staff at Trump's own club. In his own words, Trump explained that he was not happy about this situation. He said that he found out Epstein was recruiting or taking workers from his spa at Mar-a-Lago. This wasn't a vague claim, it was a specific accusation about Epstein's behavior on his property. According to Trump, this discovery was a major problem for him. He portrayed it as a violation of trust and a misuse of his club's facilities and staff. The way he described it, this was a personal offense. He was the owner of the club, and these were his employees. The idea that someone was taking them away was, in his telling, a serious issue. This recent statement is significant because it shifts the focus directly to Mar-a-Lago. Before this, the reasons given for their falling out were more general. But this new claim puts Epstein's actions right inside Trump's own world, involving the people who worked for him. It raises immediate questions about what taking them meant. Was Epstein offering them jobs? Was he luring them away for other purposes? The language used by Trump was just ambiguous enough to create more questions than answers. It painted a picture of Epstein using his access to the club to interact with the staff in a way that the owner found unacceptable. The timing of this new claim is also important. It came years after Epstein's death and long after the public had already formed opinions about their relationship. For many, it felt like an attempt to add more distance between himself and Epstein, to provide a more concrete reason for their separation. However, instead of closing the book on the issue, these new words opened up a new chapter of questions. People began to wonder why this detail was only emerging now. If this happened, what did Trump do about it at the time? And what exactly did he know about what Epstein was doing with his spa workers? The story becomes even more troubling when we look closer at how Donald Trump described the spa workers. In his recent statement, he did not just say that Epstein was taking his spa workers. He specifically and repeatedly emphasized that they were young. He said, "He was taking my young spa people." This detail adds a very serious layer to his claim. By pointing out their age, Trump himself connected Epstein's actions at Mar-a-Lago to a pattern of behavior that the world now knows all too well. Epstein's crimes involved the abuse of underage girls and young women, so the word young is incredibly loaded in this context. This emphasis on the youth of the workers is critical. It suggests that Trump was aware that Epstein was not just interacting with any employees, but specifically with the younger ones. This raises the question of whether Trump understood the significance of this at the time. Was he just observing a preference, or did he suspect something more sinister was happening? His decision to highlight their age in his recent retelling forces us to consider what he might have known about Epstein's intentions. It changes the story from a simple dispute over poaching employees to a situation with much darker undertones. The repeated use of the word young could be interpreted in a few ways. On one hand, it could be seen as Trump trying to show that he was disturbed by Epstein's focus on young women and that this was part of why he took action. It could be his way of saying he recognized a red flag. On the other hand, it could be seen as an inadvertent admission that he knew about Epstein's specific interests long before the full extent of his crimes became public knowledge. If he knew that Epstein was targeting young workers at his own club, what steps did he take to protect them? Ultimately, Trump's own words place the spotlight on a very uncomfortable subject. The detail about the young spa workers is not a minor point. It is central to understanding what he might have known. It moves the conversation beyond a simple falling out between two powerful men. It brings the victims, or potential victims, into the picture. It forces us to ask tough questions about the responsibilities of a business owner and a friend. When you see a friend showing a specific interest in young employees at your establishment, what do? Trump's statement makes this question unavoidable. The public record does confirm one crucial fact. Jeffrey Epstein was indeed banned from Mar-a-Lago. This was not just a story told years later. It was an action that was taken. According to a statement from the Trump White House in 2019, the ban happened around 2007. The official reason provided at that time was very specific. The White House press secretary stated that Epstein was banned from the club after he sexually assaulted a young girl there. This official explanation is direct and severe. It points to a specific criminal act happening on the property as the reason for his expulsion. This official statement from the White House is a key piece of the puzzle. It establishes a clear and serious reason for the end of Epstein's membership at the club. The allegation of sexual assault is not a minor disagreement or a business dispute. It is a crime. By stating this as the reason for the ban, the Trump administration was drawing a firm line. They were saying that such behavior was not tolerated at Mar-a-Lago, and that action was taken once it was discovered. This explanation presents Trump as a responsible property owner who acted decisively when he learned of a terrible event. The ban itself is a verifiable event. Reports from the time, including court documents from a civil lawsuit filed against Epstein, confirm that an incident with a teenage girl did occur at Mar-a-Lago. The girl was there to give Epstein a massage. This aligns with the White House's statement that the ban was related to the sexual assault of a young girl at the club. This part of the story seems consistent and is backed by evidence from the time. It shows that there was a concrete incident that led to Epstein being removed from Trump's social and business orbit. However, the existence of this official reason makes Trump's more recent statements even more confusing. If the reason for the ban was a documented sexual assault, why bring up a different story about taking spa people years later? The White House statement was clear and unambiguous. It cited a specific crime. Trump's new story, while still concerning, is different. This discrepancy is at the heart of the confusion. It creates a situation where there are two different explanations from the same side for why Epstein was no longer welcome at Mar-a-Lago, and that leads to more questions. So we're now faced with two different explanations for why Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein had a falling out. These two stories, honestly, don't fit together very easily. On one hand, we have the official White House statement from 2019, which said Epstein was banned from Mar-a-Lago because he sexually assaulted a young girl at the club. That's a very serious and specific accusation. On the other hand, there's Trump's recent statement from July 2025. In this new version, he said the falling out was because he discovered Epstein was taking his young spa people. These are clearly not the same story. Let's try to break down the differences here. The first story involves a specific criminal act, sexual assault. It points to a single terrible event that triggered the ban. The second story is about a pattern of behavior, Epstein recruiting or luring away multiple spa workers. While that's also very concerning, it's different from an assault. One is about a crime committed against a victim, and the other is about a dispute over employees. Both stories cast Epstein in a negative light, but they provide different motives for Trump's actions. This inconsistency is, well, pretty puzzling and definitely demands a closer look. Why would there be two different versions of the same event? It's possible, I guess, that both things happened. Maybe Trump was first annoyed that Epstein was poaching his staff, and then he learned of the assault, which was the final straw. If that were the case, though, you'd expect both stories to be told together, as part of a bigger narrative. But instead, they've been presented at different times years apart, as the primary reason for the split. This separation of the two accounts is what creates all the confusion. It makes people wonder which story is actually the real one, or if the full story has even been told at all. The existence of conflicting narratives often suggests that something might be getting left out. When a story changes over time, it can really undermine the credibility of the person telling it. In a case as sensitive as this one, clarity and consistency are super important. People want to understand what happened and why. When they're given two different reasons for the same outcome, it naturally leads to skepticism. It raises questions about why the story needed to be changed or maybe supplemented. Was the first story not enough? Or does the new story serve a different purpose for the person telling it today? Let's focus on the first official reason given for the falling out between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. This reason came straight from the Trump White House in 2019. The statement was that Epstein was banned from Mar-a-Lago because he had sexually assaulted a young girl at the club. This explanation is, honestly, pretty straightforward and powerful. It portrays Trump as taking quick and decisive action in the face of a horrific crime that happened on his property. It presents him as someone who, upon learning of such an act, immediately severed ties with the perpetrator, no matter how wealthy or connected that person was. This narrative is one of moral clarity and responsibility. And this version of events is actually supported by some known facts. There really was a young woman who was brought to Mar-a-Lago to give Epstein a massage, and she later accused him of assault. This incident became part of the legal cases against Epstein in Florida. So the White House statement was based on a real event. It provided a clear, verifiable reason for the ban. For a lot of people, this explanation was enough. It showed that Trump did the right thing when confronted with evidence of Epstein's criminal behavior. It drew a clear line between him and the disgraced financier. However, by providing this as the only reason, it also raises questions about timing. The incident at Mar-a-Lago happened around 2005, and the first police investigation into Epstein in Palm Beach began in 2006. The ban from the club reportedly happened around 2007. This timeline suggests that the action was taken after Epstein's behavior had already become the subject of a police investigation. It wasn't a proactive step based on suspicion, but a reactive one based on a known allegation that was becoming public. The strength of this first story lies in its simplicity and its severity. He assaulted a girl at my club, so I kicked him out. It's an easy-to-understand and morally defensible position. It effectively distances Trump from Epstein by positioning him as the person who put a stop to the behavior, at least within his own domain. This narrative served to answer the public's questions in 2019, when Epstein's case was back in the headlines in a big way. It was a strong statement that aimed to close the chapter on their association by defining it with a clear and justifiable ending. Now let's turn to the second version of the story, the one Donald Trump shared recently, in July 2025. In this telling, the reason for the falling out was different. He said it was because he found out that Epstein was taking his young spa people from Mar-a-Lago. This narrative paints a picture, not of a single criminal act, but of a troubling pattern of behavior. It suggests that Trump became aware that Epstein was using his access to the club to recruit young female employees. This story is less about a specific crime and more about a general sense of unease and a violation of professional boundaries. This second story raises a totally different set of questions. If Trump knew that Epstein was targeting his young employees, what did he think Epstein was doing with them? The phrase, "taking my spa people," is pretty vague. Was he offering them better jobs? Was he luring them into his circle for social reasons? Or did Trump suspect something more sinister, especially given his own later description of these workers as young? This version suggests that Trump may have had knowledge of Epstein's predatory behavior before the specific assault allegation that the White House cited became the official reason for the ban. The timing of this new story is also really significant. Why introduce this narrative so many years later? Some might see it as an attempt to make his actions seem more proactive. However, this new version also complicates things for him. If he knew that a wealthy and powerful club member was systematically targeting his young female employees, it raises serious questions about his responsibility as an employer and club owner. Did he warn the staff? Did he put new policies in place to protect them? Or did he simply have a falling out with Epstein over it? The story of him being upset about someone taking his workers sounds more like a business dispute than a moral stand to protect vulnerable young women. This new narrative, maybe intended to make him look better, actually opens up a whole new line of difficult questions. In the end, we're left with a timeline that's honestly clouded by conflicting statements. The relationship between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein is a matter of public record, but the reasons for its end have been described in two very different ways. First, there was the official White House statement. Epstein was banned from Mar-a-Lago for sexually assaulting a young girl there. That was a clear, reactive measure to a criminal act. Years later, a new story emerged from Trump himself. They had a falling out because Epstein was taking his young spa people. This suggests a proactive discovery of a disturbing pattern. The two narratives aren't mutually exclusive. It's possible both are true in some form. However, they've been presented as separate, primary reasons at different times, and that creates confusion. The inconsistencies matter because they go right to the heart of a crucial question. What did Donald Trump really know about Jeffrey Epstein, and when did he know it? The first story suggests he acted after a crime was committed and reported. The second, newer story suggests he may have been aware of Epstein's predatory interest in young women at his club even earlier. This new claim, maybe meant to create more distance, has ironically brought him closer to the troubling activities at the center of the Epstein scandal. Public figures, especially those who've held the highest office, are rightly held to a high standard of scrutiny. Their words are analyzed because they have immense power and influence. When their stories change over time on a subject as serious as this one, it's natural for the public to ask why. The details about the young spa workers, introduced by Trump himself, make these questions even more urgent. It forces us to examine the responsibilities of those in power to protect the vulnerable people in their orbit, whether they're employees or guests. The full truth of what happened between these two men may never be known completely, but by carefully examining the timeline, the public statements, and the inconsistencies, we can get a clearer picture. It's a reminder that the words of our leaders matter a lot. They shape our understanding of the past and our expectations for the future. The story of Trump and Epstein is not just about two famous men. It's about accountability, transparency, and the lingering questions that remain when powerful people's stories just don't quite add up. Understanding this timeline is essential for anyone seeking the truth.